Good morning, everyone. You're welcome to today's session on business analysis. This is the foundational certificate course that helps us to understand the basics and the fundamentals of business analysis. This program is coming to you courtesy of Oak Interlink. Oak Interlink is one of the foremost training companies here in the continent of Africa, and we run an array of professional certification programs that ranges from project management to health and safety, and quite a number of numerous certification programs. So before we commence, I would love to start by introducing myself. My name is Shaka Obiernest. I have 10 years hands-on working experience and experience on leading training projects in various sectors of the economy. I've been involved in numerous interventions as it cuts across sales, IT service management, business analysis, occupational safety and health, process improvement, and project management. I'm a certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. I'm a certified DevOps professional. I'm also a certified Scrum Master. I'm a certified project manager. I'm a certified health and safety manager. I'm also a certified IT service management professional. I'm also a certified ISO 27001 Information Security Associate. I'm a certified cybersecurity professional. I'm also a certified ISO 9001 Document Controller. Now, I possess other certificates in ISO 45001, Internal Audit, Warehouse and Stores Management, Supply Chain and Logistics Management, Procurement and Contract Management, Facility and Asset Management, and First Aid. I'm a certified member of the National Association of First Aid Treatment Providers here in Nigeria, the Association of Safety Professionals in the US, the Document Management in the US, as well as the Project Management Institute, all based in the US. Now, I've undergone both local and international trainer certification courses, and I've facilitated courses for MTN Nigeria, for First Bank, MedPlus, IGI Group, Grand Imperial, Lekki Consensus, PZ, Honeywell, Main One, Tennis, Wema Bank, Jais Bank, VDF, Crohn's, Netco, Daystar Christian Center, Masters Energy, Calverton, ICANN, Petrolex, Allogene Securities, and a host of top indigenous companies and multinationals all across the country. Now, I'm currently a junior partner at Oak Interlink and the head of training at Oak Interlink Company. Oak Interlink Company, as I said, is a training company whose primary focus is on human resource development and capacity building. Now, I also have a special executive master's in entrepreneurship from the Metropolitan School of Business and Management, and that's from the UK, and a first degree in geography and regional planning from Abu University, Ecba. So this is a little brief about me. I also want to acknowledge all of the people present here. I can see Jasper, I can see Rufai, Rafu, I can see Chino also present. You're all welcome. Okay, let's dive into and start the business for the day. Now, let's start with the model one. Everything you need to know about the business analysis certification. For some of us who are interested in the certification program for business analysis, you want to become a certified business analysis professional, you want to begin a career in business analysis, you will need to undergo a certification as evidence to show that you have been trained in business analysis and that you have what it takes to stand as an authority to be able to work as a business analyst or to be able to speak to a company and advise them accordingly as a business analyst. So a business analyst certification is very much important if you are new and about to actually set your footsteps in the area of business analysis. Now, so in the growing job market, certified professionals are in high demand, and as a result, companies are actually looking for candidates who are professionally trained and eligible to work as business analysts. Now, many organizations today, like the International Institute of Business Analysis, tend to provide various certifications to analyze and validate the professionals who adequately introduce their expertise in the area of business analysis. Now, there are different types of business analysis certifications. Now, the body is the IIBA, a well-known certification authority for business analysis, which offers three important types of certification. The IIBA is the International Institute for Business Analysis. They originated from Canada, and they came up with a standard that governs the way organizations deploy business analysis. And they are the authority when it comes to certifying people in the area of business analysis. And there are three important certifications in business analysis. There's the entry certificate in business analysis, popularly known as the ECBA. There's the certification of competency in business analysis, which is CCBA. And there's also the certified business analysis professional, which is popularly called the CBAP. That's the one most of us know. So, but there are three types of certifications which each person who wants to explore a career in business analysis will need to get certified in. Now, there are requirements for each of these areas, starting with the first, which is the ECBA certification. The ECBA certification, which is actually the entry certificate in business analysis, has these prerequisites. No previous business analysis work experience is required for someone who wants to acquire a certificate in an entry-level certificate in business analysis. Then also, there needs to be an agreement with the ECBA code of conduct. Then when it comes to the exam has an application fee, which is about $60 and is not refundable. Now, the exam fee also is about $110 for the IIBA membership, or it's also $235 for non-IIBA members. Now, the training also, for the training, it also has, for anyone who's actually taking the exam, it has 50 questions that you need to answer, and the exam duration is 1 hour. In this case, there's no expectation for a renewal of your certification. When it comes to the CCBA certification, there's a minimum of 3,250 hours when it comes to the prerequisites for the business analysis certification here. And there's no work experience. There's work experience required to align you with the Basscomm guide. So there's what we call the Basscomm guide, which is called the business analysis body of knowledge. It guides you in the way you actually are able to deploy business analysis within the business environment. And in the last 7 years, of course, they are expecting you to have at least a minimum of 3,750 hours of business analysis work experience. So when it comes to the CCBA, these are the exam details. And the exam duration is normally 3.5 hours. And the credential is also to be maintained every 3 years. Now, when it comes to the CBAB, it's a minimum of 3,500 hours of business analysis work experience. It should be aligned with the Basscomm guide. And of course, they are requiring you to have 2 references from a career manager or a CBAB professional. The exam details are also stated here, which requires, an application and an exam fee as well. And the questions are 150 questions. And of course, the duration is 3 hours, 30 minutes. Good. So let's start out with understanding what informed business analysis and why it's so important within our business environment. Now, there was a particular case we had where we had to deploy business analysis to be able to resolve the issue. So we had a case of a very, very popular school. Many of us might know the school, in Lagos, that had a case whereby they had their bus drivers spend an average of an hour trying to search for the keys that they would need to actually use to start the buses that they drive to go and pick the children. Why? Because they recorded a major problem where the children were coming into school quite late. So the parents began to actually withdraw their children from that service that the school was offering, which was to provide a school bus. Why? Because if they were paying as much as 150,000 every month to have their children follow the school bus, then what was the point of having them follow the school bus when they will end up getting to the school late. So that was the problem. So how were we able to address, analyze, and change the situation to bring a solution? Because the problem was that students were getting to school late. What led to them getting to school late? The bus drivers were getting to pick them late. Why were the bus drivers getting to pick them late? And it was because the bus drivers, whenever they get to the school, the problem was not that there were not sufficient buses. There were more than enough buses. But the problem was that whenever they got to the school, this was what they faced. They had to search for the keys for each of the buses. So the buses were put in a box or in a container whereby they have to now start searching for the keys one by one, and that took a lot of time. So some of them will get to the office where the keys are being kept, and then they will go and try to search for the key that fits their own bus. They will go try it. If it doesn't work, they will go back, drop that, go and pick another one, try it, go back. You understand? If it doesn't work, go back, pick another key, go back, try. So that became the routine in that school every day that led to the bus drivers having to leave the school late, going with their buses to go and pick the students from their houses, which led to the students getting to school late. And this was a major problem. But using business analysis, we're able to solve this problem by having to first also analyze what the problem was, to be able to identify what the problem was, to be able to analyze what was the current condition and situation that was actually happening within that particular organization, because they were actually having their parents withdraw their children. So from that service of rendering the service of providing a school bus. So we had so many buses that they had invested so much money in. They had collected loans from the bank to buy so much buses, but yet, they were losing money because the bus drivers were getting to pick the children late, and the parents were very upset, and they began to withdraw their children from the school offering them that service. So they started losing money, and they called us to come and intervene to help solve that problem. Now, using business analysis, we're able to really address this problem, to be able to analyze first what was the current problem, which is, having to look at the situation and say, oh, how do we address this? Then to analyze it based on the current data that was available, looking at the current condition, and then to be able to introduce an improvement plan to be able to improve the current situation and bring about a solution that was going to fit the situation to be able to address the customer's requirement. And of course, a simple solution was to get each key, as you can see, each key, and then put them into a tag and a color-coded tag. Now, a color-coded tag, and then label each tag with the key for each bus. Very simple solution. Just having to have a board which was placed in the admin office, where if each bus driver comes in, they are able to just go straight, and based on the numbering, because the tags were also color-coded and numbered accordingly. So the ones that were even numbers were red, the ones that were odd numbers were blue. And then, of course, it was labeled accordingly. And then each number, so the buses were also numbered. For example, you have bus 001, bus 002, bus 003, bus 00, and so on and so forth. So each tag had the number of the bus attached, reflecting on it. So once you come to the board in the office, you pick the tag, you just count, and your bus is 009, and you go straight to number 9. You pick the tag because you see the number on the tag, and they will pick the tag with the key that is reflecting that tag number, and they go straight to their bus, and they're able to start it and move on. Now, also, there was also an arrangement whereby each bus was supposed to be parked according to the required number. So at the car park, we also labeled the designated portions where each car parked at the designated number based on its bus number. So all of this arrangement was what we actually ended up doing, using a tool and deploying the concept of business analysis. Of course, that helped them save the delay in having to pick the buses by an hour for each bus driver, and it led to an improvement in the cycle time and what we call the time for pickup. And at the end of the day, the parents began to reinstate their children to rejoin those buses, and then the company started making money back. Now, a simple business analysis application resolves that problem very easily. And that's why business analysis is very, very lovely and very good. So what is business analysis really? Business analysis is the practice of enabling change in an organizational context by defining needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to customers. Now, notice some very, very important keywords that were addressed in this particular definition. Is the practice of enabling change. So change is actually required to happen if you must move a business from one state, meaning the current state, to a future state. It means if you want to actually change, so the first word is change. So if you want to change the current situation in your business, because every business desires to improve, either to have an increase in customer base, either have an increase in revenue, either have an increase in capacity to deliver on the job, either have, so there's need for change for every business to move its current state to a future state. Now, and it must happen within the organizational context. When we talk about the organizational context, it means the perception of what an organization defines as change. Now, some organizations' desire for change might be an increase in customer base. It might not be increase in revenue. Some organizations might be particular about increase in revenue and not increase in customer base. Some organizations might be particular about increase in capacity and process ability, the process capability to be able to deliver to more customers within a shorter time. That might be the context in which they are trying to bring about improvement and moving their current state to a future state. And that might be their own change. So by also being able to define what the company needs and recommend solutions that deliver value, because solutions can also be delivered, but the solutions might not deliver value to the stakeholders. So what is value? Value is the perceived solution that actually addresses a problem for a stakeholder. So the stakeholders are the ones that determine what value is, not you, the organization, not you, the company. The stakeholders are the ones that determine what value is. For example, some stakeholders might value time. So it means delivering to them on time might be what they value more than even the quality of what you are delivering in terms of the excellence and perfection of the product you are delivering. They might value time, as in meeting to time, over that. Some organizations or some stakeholders might prefer or value having to deliver an excellent product or service over time. They don't mind that you take your time, but as long as what you are delivering is excellent and it is perfect. So it not depends on what the stakeholder perceives as value. So value is determined by the stakeholder, the client, and not you, the organization. So what does a business analyst do? Because in business analysis, as a method to actually address a problem, you must also understand that there are people who function within that capacity to be able to deliver solutions. They are referred to as business analysts. So business analysts, what do they do? So business analysis is actually the practice of enabling change. We've defined and established that. But business analysts are agents of this change in question. So if there's anyone that is to initiate change, it is a business analyst. If we are talking about the agents of change, they are business analysts. They are professionals who actually analyze a business or organization by documenting its systems, its processes, assessing its business model, identifying vulnerabilities, and also diversing solutions. So what does this mean? It simply means that every business must be able to work towards bringing about an improvement. So a business cannot remain static or in the same state for a very long time. Over some time, over the years, that business will collapse and go under. Why? Because the only thing that's constant in life is change. Change definitely has to happen. And that's why organizations who started out very well, who were doing exceptionally well, over some time went under. Why? Because they refused to change in the way they were going about doing their business. An example of such business is the Starcoms. Where are the Starcoms of today? So most of them have gone under. Starcoms, Visa Phone, BlackBerry, Kodak, IBM, and the likes. Many of these organizations have gone under. Why? Because of their inability to be able to respond to the changes that are happening within the environment and their inability to be able to align with those changes. And so in your organization, Basscomm, you must be able to recognize that a lot of things are changing right now in the way businesses are being done. Now, you must be able to do more with less. So it means for Basscomm to be able to function more efficiently, it must understand that it must be able to deploy less effort to achieve more results. So efficiency is regarded as load over effort. So if we are saying load over effort, it means that minimal effort is required to be able to produce more results. So it means if you are having to do more and that means more business is coming for you as an organization, more opportunities are presenting themselves for you as an organization, and you are actually employing more people because you need more effort to be able to tackle the more opportunities and business coming your way, it means you are not efficient as an organization. Why? Because efficiency is actually either you are doing more with less, or you are doing more with, and more, as more is coming, you are also using the same effort. Then in that case, you are efficient. But if you are actually increasing in your effort to be able to actually carry more load, then you are not efficient. Because what has happened is that you have increased in the amount of money you are requiring to do the work whereby you want to generate more profit. That is not efficiency. So in every business must function to be able to work towards actualizing their objectives efficiently. So what does a business analyst do? A business analyst ensures that the organization is able to function and work more efficiently. Business analysts go by making, they go by many job titles. Many of us might have gotten to job certain organizations and be wondering, are they business analysts there? They might not be called business analysts in the real sense. They might be called a different job title, but the tasks they are involved in are business analysts tasks. So it's not about the name the person is called, it's about the tasks the person is involved in, which we are going to see as we go on. So there are tasks the person must be involved in. Now, the different job titles you might find in different organizations where the task of business analysts are being carried out could be job titles like a business architect, a business intelligence analyst, a business systems analyst, a data scientist, a enterprise analyst, a management consultant, a business analyst, a product manager, a product owner, a requirements engineer, a systems analyst. These business analysts go by these different titles, but they actually do business analysis, which is to be able to investigate what the current problem is by first identifying what the current problem is, what they actually need to improve on. So it could be that an organization has identified the fact that there's a deficiency in their business process. It could be that there's a deficiency in their policies that needs to be actually worked on. So it means there's always the need that is identified for a change to happen. So the change agents start by investigating what the current condition is and how to bring about the appropriate solutions to bring about an improvement, which is very important. So it's just like you get to a hospital. So you have a complaint about a particular sickness. So you are having headache, constant headache. So when you get to the hospital, you don't go in straight to see a medical doctor. No, they are first to carry out an evaluation or an analysis of your current condition. So they check your blood pressure, they check your temperature, they check your height, they check your weight. They want to check the present matrix and the current condition you are in before they know, okay, we need to improve this person's current condition. So it means if you are not able to identify what the current condition is for every business, meaning how is Basscomm functioning now in terms of what is their current condition? What do they have presently, the capacity to manage and deliver? What is their current status right now? How are they functioning? What's their current revenue? What's their current cycle time in the delivery of a particular service? How long does it take? How much time does it take for them to deliver a particular service? All of these metrics needs to be defined, and then an improvement plan is introduced to bring about a solution using certain techniques and certain tools to be able to bring about an improvement. So you find out that once the person who comes to the hospital is administered certain medication, there's an observation because the person is required to come back for checkup to find out whether there's an improvement in this person's current condition. And once they see an improvement, then they will sustain that improvement by ensuring that there's a maintenance of that condition. So you find out that the person will now be placed on that particular medication for a period of time, which is what happened to people, some people who have high blood pressure and so on and so forth. So there's the same approach in having to actually analyze what is the current situation and how to actually bring about a solution to bring about improvement and change it from its current state to a future state, a desirable future state, that is. So there's a difference between business analysis and business analytics, because we make that mistake. Whenever you hear the word business analytics, it's different from business analysis. Now, who does business analysis? Is a business analyst. But there's a difference between business analysis and business analytics. So business analysis is more concerned with functions and processes, while business analytics covers reviewing data and reporting, you understand, reporting what it has actually discovered in its investigation. That is business analytics. So it builds more around using statistical tools to review data and be able to come up with a report which it ends up presenting. You understand? Unlike business analysis, which is more conscious or concerned with your present functionality and the way your processes are functioning right now, and the areas where there's deficiency, the areas where there are lapses, the areas where needs to be addressed, and how to bring about an improvement in those areas. So still, many organizations use these terminologies interchangeably, not knowing, because they actually make the mistake thinking that they are the same. So as we have learned about a business analyst, what a business analyst is, let's also understand what business analysis uses to be able to actualize its objective and its goals. Okay, so how is business analysis different from other professions like the lawyers, the medical doctors, the architects, the construction engineers? How is business analysis different from all these other professions? So business analysis actually works, business analysis work includes communicating among stakeholders. Why? Because there's need to be able to find out what is in the heart of the stakeholder, to be able to find out what he or she requires. Because a business that is functioning, that is not aligning with what the client or stakeholders require, what is the need in the market based on the customer's need in the market. If it is not in alignment, there's a tendency that business will go under over some time. An example is what happened when we began to use this selfie stick. Now, the selfie stick was a good device which people used at a particular time. But over time, the need of customers began to change. So they began to look at, instead of having to work on the sticks themselves, to have people, because that became very funny and weird, where people will begin to, use a selfie stick to. So instead of working on the extension of the phone or of the stick, you understand, they began to work on the peculiarities of the feature of the camera of the phone. So you had phones that could now be able to zoom in and zoom out, meaning it could extend and be able to capture you irrespective of your distance. So instead of having to purchase a selfie stick, which is focusing on moving the phone at a distance, it focused on the peculiarity of a feature on that phone, which is the camera itself, to have it have certain peculiarities to be able to zoom in and zoom out and bring about an extension. And that is what the professional cameramen, they do. So they have cameras that have very powerful lenses that can zoom in and zoom out, irrespective of how far you are from them and how close you are from them, which was what the phone companies began to do, and they began to introduce this feature. So it completely knocked off the relevance and the need for that particular product called the selfie stick. And many of course, many of those companies that were involved in the production of such products went under, understanding that, of course, certain needs have changed, and of course, those products became irrelevant. So it's important we are able to communicate based on what the customer needs and be able to reflect that in your product or service delivery to be able to address the customer's need, and not, like a typical example is what CNN did very recently. Because, a lot of companies, technological companies, began to work on producing tools that enabled reporters to be able to deliver news very fast. So reporters are not particular about tools that will help them deliver the news very fast. Rather, they were more important about what will enable them deliver the news faster, meaning they wanted to deliver faster news, you understand, not tools that will help them deliver the news faster. And then, of course, they introduced a lovely concept via business analysis to be able to say, okay, since the assets are in the hands of the people where the news is, meaning, why don't we move the service to the particular client, people in those environments who have the assets. So it means that wherever you are with your phone, since you are where the news is happening, you can actually video the event and be able to post and send the video to CNN without CNN investing money to send a reporter or a analyst to come down from their organization to come to that local village in Adamawa to cover that news. So it means there's someone in Adamawa who has a camera who will be able to be on CNN iReport platform to be able to project that news, and is given a certain fee for that. So it means the approach changed completely. It moved the way the business is being serviced to make it such that the news can get to CNN much faster, because before the CNN agent is able to get to Adamawa, that remote village, the person who is already there and the event is happening real time is able to capture it and send it to CNN much faster via an electronic format. Of course, because social media began to make this, of course, very possible. It's the same thing that Uber is doing. Uber doesn't really have cars and buses and trucks. No. Uber is not purchasing those equipment, purchasing those vehicles and sending them to designated places. No, all they just do is make an arrangement with the people who have the assets, meaning those who have the cars, and at a certain percentage, they are able to use their own cars to be able to convey people from point to point and even drive them. So that dual position functionality here, you use your asset, you also function as a driver to be able to move the person from one point to the other. And Uber is able to get a certain percentage, which is a larger chunk of that percentage from you, and share a certain percentage with you to help you maintain the asset you are using to be able to offer that service. Wonderful analysis. Business analysis is what informed that. And that was how Uber was born. I'm telling you, business analysis is one of the most important and relevant approaches to managing business now. And a lot of organizations are beginning to adopt it, and business analysis are beginning to become highly sought after and in high demand. So there are many other roles, job roles, that have similar job descriptions. as that of business analysts, such as IT business analyst, technical business analyst, online business analyst, business systems analyst, or even system analyst. So how is business systems or how is business analysis different from these job roles? There's a difference because business analysis is slightly different from financial research, because many of us would think business analysis has to do with researching. So it goes beyond that. Financial researching is still restricted to research. You understand? And business analysis is slightly different from project management. Why? Because, yeah, the improvement of the current condition, which is an improvement plan, is an initiation of a project, meaning for you to be able to ensure a change is effected, that is a project. But business analysis goes beyond just the creation of the project to initiate a change. It looks at it beyond that point. It's looking at once the change has been effected, meaning the project has been established, how is the current performance improved upon? Meaning, is there an improvement? So it also analyzes that even after you have come up with a product via a project, has there been an improvement in the current condition identified earlier? So business analysis is going beyond project management. It's also slightly different from quality assurance, organizational development, testing, training, documentation, and even several other actions. It goes beyond all of this. It's slightly different from all this, but it also depends on the organizational goals that is predominant within that business. And the business analyst will act as one of those roles that are mentioned in the earlier part, which is that they are involved in IT business analysts, you understand? Technical business analysis, online business analysis, business system analysis, so they are looking at different aspects of the business. They're looking at policies. They're looking at the regulations, compliance issues. They are looking at the capability of your process to be able to deliver based on the fact that you've just had an increase in customer base. Because you might have had an increase in customer base, but your capacity to be able to attend to this increased customer base might not be there. So it means you might have a situation whereby you might have customers complaining, even though you have had marketing and sales do their work to bring in more customers, as that business has now boomed, which was the desire from the beginning. But your organization has not increased in its capacity to be able to deliver this service to this increase in customer base. And that's where the problem tends to come in. So business analysis is able to identify that and be able to see how it can bring about an improvement in that area of deficiency to be able to match up and ensure that the business has the capacity to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that have increased to be able to bring more revenue to the business. Okay, so there's a difference between a business analyst and a system analyst as well, because we tend to hear the word analyst and we try to marry them and put those functionalities to everyone. It's not the case. The business analyst profession requires an entirely different set of necessary skills involving eliciting, analyzing, communicating, testing, and verifying requirements and identifying the path to solve business problems and improve processes. So I want you to write down as your particular task and role, I want you to write 3 things that you think you have control over and 3 things you don't have control over right now on your job. I'm going to give you 1 minute to quickly do that. Write 3 things in your job that you have control over and 3 things that you don't have control over right now on your job. I'm going to give you 1 minute to quickly do that. Okay, so I believe we've done that. Now, why is it important we understand what we have control over and what we don't have control over? Because as a business analyst, you must be able to know how to be able to ensure what you don't have control over, you are able to manipulate to have control over it. There are certain things you don't have control over, but how do you manage the things you don't have control over? For example, you don't have control over the weather. You don't have control over the government policies that are predominant within a business. So, but how do you manipulate this? How do you put this to your advantage? And that's why the aspect of context comes in. Because, for example, you don't have control over weather, but you can be able to do certain things before the weather change. It means you can be able to predict that the weather will be like this. So you're able to plan ahead to be able to do the things you need to do within the season that the weather is not favorable, so that by the time you find yourself in an unfavorable weather, you have already addressed the things you need to address in anticipation that the weather will change. Another example is government policy. So it means there are government policies that might not be favorable in the environment where you are in. How do you manage that? Is to change environment. And that's why you find that Dangote has also established its outlets in other countries in Africa. So it means, example, you don't have control over the NEPA situation right now in the country. So you're able to address this. How are you able to address this? Very So the business analyst profession actually requires an entirely different set of necessary skills involved in trying to elicit, analyze, communicate, test, and also verify requirements and identify paths to solve problems and improve processes. So the idea here is there are problems that arise that you feel you don't have control over. And there are problems that arise that you feel you have control over. So what happens to the ones you feel you don't have control over? You have to be proactive in having to address those kind of problems. It means you either make provision for it in advance by having to set a reserve, and that is like a risk management initiative, whereby you know that there's the risk of this occurring. So it means you predict by anticipating that this could happen and be able to make provision in case of any eventualities. And that's the way to address those kind of situations. So the business analyst actually does this. And on the other hand, the system analyst mainly focuses on creating and implementing only specific systems with a more technical approach to the work. So the system analyst is a bit more technical, you understand? And the system analyst deals with programming, deals with coding, they are more technical compared to a business analyst. A business analyst is a bit more familiar with the business accolades, that he is able to collaborate and engage the stakeholders a little better because he understands both what is going on in terms of the business and how it impacts on the investment of the stakeholders. So he's also trying to ensure that there's return on investment. So he's able to liaise with the stakeholders to bring them into a good understanding of what is transpiring and what is going on in respect to the business. And he uses the appropriate terminologies to be able to do a presentation reflecting where the business is and how whatever change they are making will impact the business current situation, using terminologies that the clients can easily relate with. So they use more of business accolades, business terminologies than technical terminologies, which is where the system analyst is actually stationed in, and that is where they stay. And that is where the problem is. They can't connect with the external stakeholders. So they are more techy and they are more focused around the technicality of the business rather than focusing on the entire business as it affects the market and the surrounding environment where this business is functioning from. Good. So you must understand that the business analyst is also someone who is different from a data analyst. So we tend to mix them. Please, let's notice that there is a difference between the business analyst and other professions. There's a difference between the business analyst and a system analyst, and there's a difference between a business analyst and a data analyst. Now, the business analyst responsibility actually depends on the industry standards for that particular industry. And the main objective actually includes analyzing and driving relevant solutions from the data to actually meet the business requirements. But there's someone who actually assesses the data, collects the data, is able to review the data and present what is relevant from the data to the business analyst. That is a data analyst. So on the other hand, the data analyst actually helps companies by analyzing this data. And that's where things like data science came in, because we got to look at cases whereby the data had to be understood. We needed to understand the algorithms related to this data, because data, there are patterns, and you can be able to get information from the patterns you see within this data. Now, then you had from here big data, and big data talked about being able to analyze not just small data, massive data, big data. So how do you go about analyzing big data? Meaning there are different tools you use to be able to analyze bigger data than smaller data. And that's where the big data certifications began to come in. So there's a difference between data analyst and a business analyst. You understand? Because the data analysts help companies by analyzing data and using the data to perform proper actions to present value to the business stakeholders. So data analysts also indulge themselves in providing competitive analysis or in identifying business or marketing trends. And that's one of the things that happened very recently in the use of WhatsApp. Many of us don't know, but Mark Zuckerberg recently, some years ago, bought WhatsApp, and people really didn't understand why Mark Zuckerberg would spend $16 billion to buy WhatsApp, a company that, when you analyze it carefully, that company has no way of generating money. Number one, the app is free. Number two, there's no provision for even the company to be able to advertise to you. You understand? So it means it can't generate money from adverts. Unlike Facebook or Instagram, those ones, they can actually generate money from having to advertise your brand or your product on those platforms. And there are a lot of ways these companies like Facebook and Instagram, owned by Mark Zuckerberg, even after buying Instagram, he also saw the opportunities to make money from that platform. But for WhatsApp, there were no reason. There's no way, you understand, from WhatsApp, looking at it on the surface or face value, that you'll be able to see that WhatsApp can help you generate revenue as a company. In short, many people would have looked and said it made no sense business-wise for Mark Zuckerberg to have spent even more. Imagine Instagram was bought for $3 billion, but why will he invest over, that's about $16 billion, even more? If that's times more than times 2 or times 3 of the amount to buy WhatsApp. But the idea why he bought WhatsApp, and if you notice, the names have changed to Meta. You will notice that all of these companies, they have changed their names to Meta, because Meta is now looking at what is called augmented reality. What is augmented reality? Because it's also looking at data. So what it's actually doing with WhatsApp is data mining. And it's able to do data mining by having to look at what people are actually chatting on. It means it's looking at patterns, it's looking at consumer behavior, it's studying the data based on trends, it's studying the data based on what people are actually doing at the moment, what is trending, where are they investing their money in, what area are they investing in their money in, what things are they buying, what things have they stopped buying. So he's able to advise companies from a professional standpoint that, oh, why not produce this? Why not stop producing this? Why not invest more in this? Why not? So he's able to understand consumer behavior from all of those data based on algorithms. And that is where the data analyst comes in. The data analysts also indulge themselves in providing competitive analysis or in actually identifying business or marketing trends, because the idea here is marketing trends. What is trending, right? Really, where are people, putting their money right now? Where are people tilting towards? Where are people directing their time to? What are people watching? What are people looking at? What are people investing their time on? What are people So those are the patterns that these data analysts will tend to look at. So in the business world today, these terms, business analytics and business analysis, tend to sound very similar. You understand? And the primary difference between the two processes is that business analysis is more related to functions and operations, because the business analyst is not just focused on data, it's focused on the holistic business from what is actually going on within the operation of that business at the moment, and how their processes are functioning currently, if they are actually addressing the current requirements of the stakeholders, which is what is desired in the market, and how that is able to, be improved upon to get that particular service delivery to a future state, which is the desire of the stakeholders. That is what they require. So it depends on its architectural stream, such as the process architecture and the enterprise architecture. You understand? So when we talk about process, a typical example of when we talk about process is there are organizations that they are deficient in their process delivery. Let me give a typical example. Many of us might be familiar with BRT, the BRT owned by a private company called Primera. Now, you will find out that there's a major problem in that establishment that has to do with their process capability. So the problem is not the availability of buses. You might have a case whereby you might have excessive buses, but the management of those buses is such that they are not able to work on their processes to be able to deliver on that service. So you find a lot of buses lined up and a lot of people at the bus stops queued up waiting to enter those buses. So it's at the point of entry is where the problem is. So the problem is not the absence of buses, and the problem is not the lack of people. The problem is the process involved in translating the people into enjoying that service. That's where the problem is. So how is a company like that able to improve their service delivery? Is business analysis. It looks at the process architecture and the enterprise architecture as a whole. And whereas, yeah, when we're talking about business analytics, is looking at it differently. Business analytics, this is business analysis, but business analytics is usually dependent on data and reporting. That is what is dependent on. So it's more focused on looking at the data and reporting it than looking at what is going on from the functionality of the business, the architecture of the business itself, the context, when we read the context in which the business environment is functioning, because it's also looking at the limitations of the environment where the business is. Because even though the data is telling you this and you're able to report it, but the architecture of the environment where the enterprise, the business is running from, could impact the business. So is business analysis that guides organizations to inform them that you need to change location. So you have businesses that are considering the disadvantages of the power outage or the power failure within our own environment to be able to advise a business to move to Ghana where there's constant power. It means it's able to generate more revenue and be able to reduce the cost of production and sell in Nigeria. That's a better approach, which is a business analyst. You understand the evaluation. So a business analyst is able to advise a company that for production, move your company to Ghana where there's constant power and there's still manpower in those environments. So you can drop the cost of production, but you still move the goods to be sold in Nigeria because this is where you have the market. So it's a different, that's the same thing that America is also doing. America will get China to produce products for them because the cost of production is cheaper in China and the cost of labor is cheaper, the cost of raw materials is cheaper. So they are able to get China to produce American specifications of Ford motors to be sold in America. That's a typical example of a business analysis initiative. Now, so we have the skills involved in business analysis. You understand? It involves skills, technologies, past performance, investigation, and even information search, and so on and so forth. So what is the business analysis process that you need to undergo, even on your job right now in Basscomm? Number one, there are actually widely accepted steps in the business analysis process, but each company like yours needs, your company needs and situations are different. And however, there may be some variance between what is applicable in some organizations and what is available in yours. So you want to be able to look at what the standard process entails. One, the first thing you want to start with as your take home after this session is to get oriented. You understand? That's get oriented. Make sure to clarify the business analysis rules that are present within Basscomm right now. Determine the stakeholders' perspective and then get familiar with the project history. So what this involves is to find out who are your present stakeholders, internally and externally. You understand? Find out who they are. What are their perspectives to the current condition of your business? How do they see your business right now in terms of its functionality, its performance? How do they see it? Are they, the problem could be part of your stakeholders could be comfortable with the way your business is operating. So it will be difficult for you to effect the change in a business environment where the stakeholders are comfortable with the way the business is. So it means they feel they are doing well. But there are businesses that until they see their competition and see the gap between how much or what their competition is doing compared to what they are doing, it is then they are spurred to want to effect the change to improve their current condition. So you must be able to get familiar with all of the things you've done in the past and look at how they were done and how they failed and how they actually succeeded. That will inform areas to how to go about doing yours to effect this change. So if you are effecting a change in your current condition in Basscomm, it means you are initiating a project to be actualized. Now, secondly, you must name the primary business objectives. Right now, what is your primary business objective right now? I'm sure you must have had a strategy session at the beginning of this year or at the end of last year. And you must have come up with some objectives for the year. Strategic business objectives that you want to actualize in the first quarter, second quarter of the year, or within the next 12 months of this calendar year. So what are these primary business objectives that you have identified? So you want to identify these primary stakeholders' expectations, reconciling all the conflicting expectations and making sure the objectives are clear and actionable. Because even though you have highlighted so many things to actualize within this year, there are primary ones which are the ones you prioritize to focus on to actualize at the immediate. It's important you are able to prioritize those objectives. So it means the most important one, which will almost immediately introduce an improvement in your current condition, is what you start attending to first from the beginning of the year before you start attending to other ones. Then you define the project scope, you create a business plan, then you define all the requirements, you support the technical implementation, you help implement this solution, and then you assess the value. Now, look at it again. You get oriented, meaning you must be aware of what is the present, you understand, situation. Then you must name the primary business objectives by identifying the primary stakeholders' expectations. Thirdly, you must define the project scope, meaning you need a clear and complete statement of the project scope, which is you want to initiate a change. What does it entail? What are you required, you understand, to actualize within that initiative? Then you must create a business analysis plan, and you must set what is called timelines, steps to go about actualizing it, and what your outcome and deliverables will be. You must also define what the requirements are, and that's whereby you have to fine-tune the questions you are actually asking the stakeholders to be clear on what exactly they want. Then you support all the technical implementation that will be carried out in the course of the initiation of this change. Then you help to ensure the implementation of this solution. And at the end of the day, whatever value that is gotten, you must be able to assess it. And you understand how much progress did the organization make as a result of the effecting of this change, and are there any needed follow-ups to ensure that this change is sustained? Because a change could be effected and things could return back to the way it was before, because you could not sustain the change implemented, and that could be a problem. So some of the business analysis techniques you need to deploy to be able to bring about the actualization of this change is, there's a popular technique called MOST, there's SWOT. Many of us might be familiar with SWOT. There's Moscow, there's Catwalk, there's the 5 whys, and there's the 6 thinking hats. Now, I'm going to look at them one by one. These are lovely tools and, lovely techniques rather, that you can deploy to be able to help you actually achieve an effective business analysis in your business. So, what are the different techniques of business analysis? Countless hurdles and obstacles, of course, face any company that wants to stay on top of the heap, on top of its game. Fortunately, there are also a handful of varying business analyst techniques. So let's look at some of them. Let's start with the first one, Catwalk, which we actually saw here. Catwalk. Now, Catwalk simply means an acronym that simply means customers, actors, transformation process, worldview, owner, and environmental constraints. Now, this technique called the Catwalk helps identify the main parties and the processes potentially affected by any action the business tends to undertake. Now, this technique actually helps business analysts to thoroughly evaluate how a proposed action will affect a collection of different parties and elements. For example, they introduced what is called the cashless policy. Now, if they introduce the cashless policy, which was to, and because of the fact that there was a problem. What was the problem? There was high rate of crime, robbery. Why? Because people were moving around with cash very often. So in order to reduce robbery and crime, they introduced the cashless policy. Do you understand? But in having to introduce the cashless policy via electronic banking and being able to carry out transactions electronically, there was also an effect of that solution, which led to some problems that emerged. So there was what we call internet fraud. So it led to, online, hacking and things like that. So we now have to, of course, in order to address that problem, they also needed to address the problem that had created. So if you had a case whereby you introduced cashless policy and you now had a lot of people where their accounts are being hacked easily, then we needed to also put what is called ethical hackers to be able to think ahead that, okay, we are creating a system. Now, let us attempt to break this system and see whether it is capable for us to break it. So they bring in ethical hackers to try and hack and see if what they've structured or designed can be broken or can be hacked. If the ethical hacker can't, it means no one else can from outside. You understand? So it means, because obviously, whenever you are affecting a solution, there will be a ripple effect. There will be an effect that could be negative, because of course you are trying to bring about a positive effect, but there could also be a negative effect at the end of the day. So how are you able to ensure that you understand, if I introduce a solution, what is the implication of this solution? How will it affect other areas? You understand? How will it impact on other things? Then there's also the MOSCO. The MOSCO is also a lovely technique, which is an acronym that means must or should, could or would. What is this? What does this mean? This process actually prioritizes requirements by presenting a framework where every single demand is evaluated, compared to other necessary requirements within the business. Now, it is actually a must or have. When we say it is a must have or a should have. Now, some things that we are actually trying to deploy within the business, it's important we are able to define whether is this a must have or is this a should have. You understand? We should have this, but it might not be a must for us to have it. It might be a must for us to have it. You understand? And we are not looking at it from the point of view that we should have it. It is a must for us to have it, meaning it is mandatory. It is a should have, meaning it is optional. You understand? So you look at some of the things that you are trying to effect as an improvement to find out whether it is a must have or it is a should have. Now, it is something that could improve the product or something that would be an ideal future element. You understand? Because if it is the fact that it is a must have, yes, it will bring about improvement and it is mandatory we effect it. Meaning we have no alternative. We have no option but to effect it. And that happens a lot when we are dealing with compliance issues. You understand? So when a policy is brought out by the government and we need to actually effect a change, it is a must in order to remain in business. That is, we must have this. You understand? It's different from we should have this. Then another very important technique is called MUST. MUST is also an acronym that means mission, objectives, strategies, and tactics. Now, what does this mean? Business analysts use these elements to conduct a detailed and complete initial, or what we call internal analysis of the organization's goals and how to actually handle each one. Now, there are other techniques like the PESTIL. PESTIL is actually also an acronym that means political, economic, social, technological, legal, and economical. Now, these business analysts that use this technique actually use the PESTIL model to evaluate the various external factors that can potentially affect their company and how best to address them. That's why I was saying that earlier, there are things you have control over and there are things you don't have control over. So I mentioned we should list 3. So if you had listed things you don't have control over, for example, regulatory bodies, you don't have control over them in terms of what they are coming to effect. So if a regulatory body is visiting your office and there's need for compliance, you don't have control over that because you don't have control over what government has decided to do. You understand? So PESTIL is going to be a lovely technique to help you evaluate the various external factors that could potentially affect your company and how to actually best address them. There's also SWOT analysis. Now, SWOT simply means strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And this technique actually identifies a corporate structure. You understand? A corporate structured area of strength and weaknesses, translating them into opportunities and threats. And here, the knowledge gained helps determine proper resource allocation. And the idea here is to be able to identify what your core business is. Because as a company, Basscomm, what is your core business right now? What is your core business? You understand? That is where your area of strength is. Now, every other area that enables you deliver on your core, you understand, is your weakness. It means you are not strong in the areas where you are having enabling services. What are enabling services? Services that enable you deliver on that core service. For example, security. Basscomm probably might not be very strong in delivering the security expertise required. So you outsource that part to a security outfit, maybe, for example, Halogen. You understand? So maybe you're having certain meetings, management meetings, and then of course there needs to be provision for food. Now, of course, Basscomm doesn't have, a catering service. So in terms of providing the appropriate food that the management staff will eat in the course of the meeting, there needs to be that aspect needs to be outsourced to a catering outfit that will provide the food that will actually be of standard, that will get the management staff, you understand, refreshed for them to continue their meeting. That area is your area of weakness. So the area of weakness, the only way to address it is to be able to outsource it to those companies where your area of weakness is their own area of strength. You understand? It's the same thing within your team. It's important that you put people who you've identified that has an area of strength within a team where their area of strength, you understand, is functional, and someone has strength in their own area of weakness who serves as someone who complements them in their own area of weakness. So if someone has an area of weakness and an area of strength you've identified, you must put them within a team where their area of weakness can be complemented by another team member who that area of weakness for this team member is another team member's area of strength, so that they can function in strength because each person is complementing each other, which is very important. There's also the sixth thinking hat. This analysis process directs a group's line of thinking by brainstorming all of the alternative perspectives and ideas. And it uses these six hats in questioning, you understand? And of course, the white part of the heart focuses on the data and logic. The red part of the heart focuses gut feels, emotions, and intuition. The black part of the heart focuses on potential negative results, which could go wrong. Then the yellow part of the heart focuses on positives, optimistic. Then the green part of the heart focuses on creativity, and the blue part of the heart focuses on process control and the big picture review. Now, then we have the 5 whys. The 5 whys. The 5 whys is actually a very, very lovely technique. It's the last technique amongst these techniques we're looking at today. Now, the 5 whys helps you ask the question why 5 times to drill down to the root cause of the likely problem that is before you. Remember, you're analyzing what could be the problem, why we are not where we ought to be as a company. Why are we not having this size of customer base? Why are we not generating this kind of revenue as a company? Why are we not delivering based on this level of performance? These are questions we need to ask, and the 5 whys will help us ask this question by drilling down to the root cause of the problem, why this is happening, and it's by asking the question why 5 times. Now, in having to also deploy business analysis within an organization, please remember, business analysis, if you are going to carry out this, there's a set standard and there's a way to go about it. It's not based on how you feel, what you think, what you believe it should follow. There's a framework, meaning there's a structure in which you must align with in actually deploying business analysis. One of the bodies that have created this standard is called the International Institute for Business Analysts, and they originated from Canada, the IBBA. So there's a structure that they've come up with, and they have created what is called the body of knowledge, which we call the BABOK guide. The BABOK is called the Business Analyst Body of Knowledge. It's a structured approach in which you actually deploy business analysis to be able to bring about a change, to ensure there's value delivered at the end of the day to your clients, to your stakeholders. So in business analysis, there's the core value itself. You understand? The core value. Now, the first thing is change. Of course, there's need for us to look at our business and identify the fact that something has to change. Trust me, every organization knows that something has to change in the way they're operating right now. You understand? And change here is normally need-driven to actually bring about transformation. Is the need to actually bring about transformation. That is change. Now, whatever needs to change, you understand, there needs to also be a solution that must be built. That solution that must be built is actually the specific option to help meet that particular need you have identified. What is the need here? Is the issue or the chance to actually bring about that change. So there's the need to bring about a change, and there's the solution to that need. Now, there's also the stakeholders, which is actually the stakeholders that are related to this change and the need for a solution. That means they are related to the fact that there's the need for this change to happen. Then, whenever the solution has been introduced, it then brings value to the stakeholders. What is value? Value is you're talking of the worth of something to a stakeholder. So the question is your stakeholders in identifying what they require. And that's why in the knowledge areas of business analysis, one of the very important area is requirements identification. So you must be able to identify what the stakeholders require right now. So who are your stakeholders? What do they require? What change do they require in the way you are actually functioning now? What is their need for that change? You understand? Because the change is one thing, the need for that change is another thing. You understand? So at the end of the day, once you bring that solution to actually meet that need, they will need to assess whether this solution is what we value. You understand? For example, you might be bringing a solution to a problem, but it might not be what you understand the person needs. For example, for some of us who are Christians, you might have someone who is probably blind. Like in the case of the Bible, we had a case whereby Jesus asked someone. The man was crying out, "Thou son of David, have mercy on me." And then, of course, Jesus stopped by and asked, "Okay, so what do you want me to do for you?" Because his need might be, oh, he needs money. You understand? But he needed to verify, what exactly do you need? He said that I may see clear. You understand? Now, it's important you ask the question, the right questions. You ask the stakeholders the right question. What do they need? Because what a stakeholder might need might vary from what another stakeholder needs. You understand? So you do not assume based on what you see. You must be able to confirm by questioning them to know what exactly they need. At the end of the day, whatever is to be delivered, there's a context in which it is to be delivered. You understand? Because the context is the perception or the perspective to which each stakeholder views the solution. That is the context. You understand? So the circumstances surrounding the change is what we call the context. Now, the advantages of the business analysis starts with, of course, the tool. What is the tool? To make organizations more effective, productive, and profitable. You understand? Another advantage of business analysis is to actually bring about a chance for change. And chance here for an organization to express their needs, welcome changes, and find solutions that create value for them. Another advantage is to pioneer the future, which actually ensures that the organization is on track and reaching their goals. You understand? It's a pointer to the future. And then also, it helps to reduce error. It brings about error reduction because every information is considered and then compared at the end of the day. Then, of course, business analysis also improves communication. Because all people involved are talked to, allowing them to express their own opinions. So every party that this business touches, you understand, is able to view their own perception of what is going on. So you're able to engage all the appropriate stakeholders to be able to capture what they require, what their expectations are, what their needs are, what their wants are, in order to be able to express it within the business environment. So that at the end of the day, you are delivering what meets the stakeholders' requirement. You are not delivering based on what you think, you understand, is meeting the stakeholders' requirement, but what actually meets the stakeholders' requirement, because you have engaged them. You have actually heard them out. You understand? Now, customer satisfaction is another advantage of business analysis, because all stakeholders and their goals are then included in what is being done. Now, business analysis has 6 knowledge areas you must be knowledgeable about. When we say you must be knowledgeable about, it means you must have basic knowledge of all these areas. And these are different areas of business analysis. You understand? Every business has different areas you need to analyze. So there's the planning and monitoring, there's the strategy analysis, there's the requirements analysis and design definition, there's the elicitation and collaboration, there's the solution evaluation, and there's the requirements lifecycle management. These are the 6 areas in having to analyze a business, and you must be knowledgeable about these areas if you must function as a business analyst, and you must be able to at least have the basic knowledge for each of these areas on how to be able to handle them, and there are tasks involved in handling them. Let's look at each area and the tasks required to actually handle them, because you can attack a business to analyze it without actually handling the various tasks covered in each area of the business analysis process. So let's look at the tasks and the areas of each business analysis. So when we look at this area, business analysis planning and then mentoring, because this part talks about coming up with a plan of action, meaning it's like a proposal of what to do. And as you effect it, you need to cross-check, meaning you need to keep monitoring and checking if what you are doing is aligning with what you are proposed to do. You understand? So there must be a monitoring all the time. And that's what happens in the one is actually trying to fly an aircraft. So you have what is called a control tower that monitors the aircraft once it takes off from the tarmac to ensure that it meets its destination. So there's always a communication all the time. Once the airplane takes off from the tarmac, because the plan is to arrive at a certain destination, and the coordinates for its destination would have been entered into the system of the aircraft. And there's the control tower in the airport that must be monitoring the airplane while it's in the air. Why? Because once it gets to the air, there could be turbulence, and it will move it from the appropriate place or where it actually is supposed to arrive at based on the coordinates, and the coordinates could be shifted based on the turbulence in the air. So it is the duty of the control tower in monitoring the aircraft to notify the pilot that you have gone off course. So these are the new coordinates you need to enter into the airplane system in order to align back to your destination. If not, the way you are going, you will not arrive at your destination. So airplanes that refuse to communicate or lose communication with the control tower while it's monitoring it are the ones that go missing. Do you understand? So it's important that whatever plan to arrive at a certain destination you have come up with, you must also be monitoring to be sure, because sometimes things don't go according to plan. So you must be monitoring to ensure that you are still on track, because sometimes you might have veered off and unconsciously, just a little, you understand, deviation could land you in a completely different place that is completely different from what the stakeholders have required of you. So the task here is that you need to plan your business analysis approach. You need to plan stakeholder engagement. You need to plan business analysis governance. It means there needs to be an oversight over how you're actually going about deploying business analysis. They call it the governance. Then there's the planned business analysis information management, and then there's a planned business analysis performance improvement. Now, the next knowledge area, the area which you need to have knowledge of, the next area of business analysis is elicitation and collaboration. Elicitation talks about, engaging the stakeholders to ask the right questions as regards to what they require. So if you're actually questioning them, you are using tools like questionnaires, you are doing interviews, you are doing what is called Delphi technique to be able to interview them, to be able to ask them questions and be able to structure the questions you are asking to actually get the right information from them. So you are able to elicit the appropriate information from them once you engage the stakeholder to find out what they require, what their expectations are. You understand? So that is what you are able to fulfill, because fulfilling that is what eventually determines whether you are offering value to the stakeholders or not. So, for example, as a company right now, what exactly have you found out what your customers need, what the market is actually requiring of you, what is needed by the customers in the market right now? Are you just following business as normal based on what you think it is? Because the needs of customers changes every day. It changes per time. You understand? The needs of the customers last year is different from what it is this year. You understand? It's changing. So you need to understand that this change is happening. So you need to keep confirming what exactly is needed in order to be in alignment. And that's soliciting. So even in soliciting, there must be a collaboration with your stakeholders. So as you are actually engaging to do what they are required of you, you must still keep confirming if what you are doing is what they expect. So it means you must be continuously engaging them, meaning it must be a collaborative effort between the stakeholders and you as a company, so that as you are doing these things, you are confirming per time if this is what the stakeholders require. And that is what informed the approach called Agile. Agile, using a lovely framework called Scrum, helps you to introduce this collaborative effort, whereby you're able to engage your stakeholders while the project is ongoing. Why? Because a number of times they are not clear as regards what their requirements are. It tends to change. So you must understand that since the scope changes again and again, you must be able to ensure that you are able to verify via feedback. And that is where the terminology called iterative comes in Agile. So Agile is both iterative and incremental. And that's a lovely technique you want to also deploy in having to go about managing this area where you collaborate with the stakeholders to be able to ensure there's an alignment with what you are doing with what they expect. The task here is to prepare for elicitation, conduct elicitation, confirm elicitation results, communicate business analysis information, and stakeholder engagement. Now, there's also the requirements lifecycle management, because when it comes to the requirements, you understand, there's need to be able to understand that there are different aspects that is required. You understand? So there must be a life cycle. A life cycle talks about the stages of requirements. You understand? It talks about the stages of requirements. So there's traceability requirement. So there are different requirements that you must ensure that is addressed in the course of the project. So the task here means you need to trace these requirements. You understand? That's why there's traceability. There's also information requirements. So there's maintenance requirements. You understand? There's prioritizing requirements. There's access requirement changes. There's approve requirements. These are all the tasks we need to be involved in actually carrying out the management of this area that you need to have knowledge of. There's also another area called strategy analysis. You understand? Meaning you need to evaluate what strategy you are. Strategy is normally long-term. You understand? And you know, there's the ultimate point of strategy, which eventually trickles down to tactical, then to operations. You understand? So the tactical is more at the point of initiating a project. Operations is where your day-to-day activities now start happening, to bring from the top the strategy that you have come up with, you understand, down to an appreciable level, whereby on a regular day-to-day basis, this can be actualized. But there's a need for the analysis of your strategy. So the task here involves analyzing what the current state of your business is. You understand? Because if you are going to come up with a strategic objective, which we had probably had at the beginning of the year in our strategy session, we must be able to analyze the current state of our business. You understand? And like I said, you must be able to find out what's the current condition, and which is what happens when you get to the hospital. They take your temperature first, they take your blood pressure first, they take your height, weight, you understand? to be able to find out what's your current state, you understand, before you can be allowed to go in to see the medical doctor. Because he will need to be able to find out what your current state is, and his attempt is to improve your current state in order for you to be better. So for you to have a better business operation and for your business to function better, we need to be able to find out what is the current state. Then you must also be able to define what the future state is. Because if we have defined what the current state is, we should also know what we expect as the improvement stage. So if we don't know what the future state is, then we will not know when we get there. So we must be able to define what it is. So if we are improving as an organization, what are we improving to in terms of customer base, in terms of revenue generation, in terms of process capability, you understand, in terms of policy, in terms of, you understand, compliance issues, you understand, what are we improving to? You understand, what is our changing to become? What are we changing to become? Do you understand? We must be able to define the future state. We must access all the risk involved in actually doing this. So if we move from our current state, what's the risk implication? We will be exposed. You understand? We will be at, you understand, in a helpless situation. We will be in a situation whereby we'll be vulnerable. Assess the risk, because any change that needs to be effected has risks. That's the truth. Any change that needs to be effected has risk. It leaves you vulnerable. That's the truth. So you must be able to make provision for alternatives whereby you are not in a helpless situation. That's where risk management comes in. So you must be able to analyze risk. And what are the risk management measures you are putting into place? Because you must be able to define how to respond in case risks occur. And risks, there are positive risks and there are negative risks. Then you must be able to define your change strategy. These are lovely tasks you must carry out in the course of strategy analysis. Then the next task is the requirements analysis and design definition. Now, the design definition talks about coming up with a design of the solution. Do you understand? The design of the solution, so that you can have like a prototype you can display before the client. And that's what happens a number of times in Agile. If you are using the Agile approach in managing a project, whereby you are able to do an iteration, which is to create a prototype and a sample that you present before the client to gain feedback if what you have done aligns with what it requires. So there must be a design definition. It means you must be able to define what should be the design or the prototype or what it should look like. And if that is what you have done, you must be able to present it before the client to gain feedback. Do not attack the entire project as a whole to initiate that change, but come up with a dry run, a test run, a sample, you understand, and see the implication and the response of the community, the market, or the customers based on this change you're about to effect. That feedback will inform whether you should go all out or you should step down and recheck what you're about to do. So there's the requirements analysis that helps to be able to actually ensure there's a proper alignment with what is required by the stakeholders. So the task here, it involves specifying and modeling the requirements, verifying requirements, validating requirements. You see, verifying and validating requirements is what we call vetting, confirming, because there might be a mix-up. There might be something missed out. There might be something that might have been overlooked, you understand, in the course of translating the information you got from the client or the stakeholder to what you want to carry out. It's like, you collected requirements from the client, like a waiter comes to take your order, you understand, to give the chef in the kitchen to prepare the meal you had requested for. But between the point at which he collected your order, what he captured in the document, you understand, in that order sheet, he might have made a mistake. There might have been an alteration. So by the time he is taking it to the waiter will, of course, assume that that is what he captured and produced just that. So at the point of actually the waiter collecting the order of the waiter, you understand, and trying to create it, there needs to be a confirmation and a validation at that point. If what has been collected from you as your order is what you actually, that was actually stated in the order sheet of the waiter. And this validation and verification is very important, so that you, at the end of the day, don't invest resources, you don't invest time and money doing what, you understand, is not actually required of the stakeholder, because there was a mistake, because there was something missing, or something overlooked, or something that was not properly captured in the requirements collection. Then you must also define the requirements architecture. You must define the design options, and you must also analyze potential value and recommendation solutions. Now, the next knowledge area is solution evaluation. Now, this final area, solution evaluation, involves this task. And when we talk about solution evaluation, let me be very, very clear about what this knowledge area addresses. You understand? Which you need to be knowledgeable about in having to carry out a business analysis. Now, the solution evaluation is that you could deploy a solution, you understand, but it might not fit the current environment. You understand? You might introduce a solution that might not be received by the current market. You understand? So there needs to be an evaluation of the solution you are trying to introduce into the market. So some of the tools being used in having to carry out a solution evaluation is an FMEA. What is FMEA? Failure mode and effect analysis. It means if I introduce this solution, now can I test to see what the outcome, you understand, will be, the implication of the introduction of this particular solution. So it means I will check how the environment will respond if I make this change. Do you understand? So I will not make the entire change at once. So I will introduce it in batches and stages to evaluate how the environment will respond in its receiving this solution. An example is, having to introduce a new drink, for example. You are introducing a new drink. That's the same concept and approach a company that introduced Mountain Dew did. They did not introduce it completely to the entire environment. So they first introduced it into a community in Lagos, we understand, on Lagos Island. And then they had people tested, gave them their feedback. They're able to look at how this, so when we're talking about introducing a solution, you are able to introduce a solution and do that first in stages to be able to find out how the response of the people will be, to also confirm if this solution is actual, because you mustn't also solve a problem with only one solution. I repeat, you mustn't solve a problem to initiate a change to the current problem and to address it by introducing one solution. You must have options of solutions. You understand? And the options of solutions gives you the opportunity to be able to confirm which is best, the solution that will actually fit this current situation. You understand? Because there are always alternative solutions that actually must be produced in the attempt to solve a particular problem. So if you have options, you can now have the option to choose which one will best be able to fit this current situation. There are solutions you might come up with, but they might not be either at the current state the best option to introduce. They might be lovely solution, but they might not be solution that needs to be deployed now. They could be deployed later. But there are solutions that you come up with that could be deployed immediately. So there are temporary solutions, there are permanent solutions. You understand? So you need to create those options of solutions, and the task involved in that is to measure solution performance, is to analyze performance measures, is to analyze solution limitations, is to analyze enterprise limitations, and is to also recommend actions to increase solution value. It's like companies that are actually introducing a new feature in their product. For example, you have a car, and the cars, before they translated from from the manual cars to the automatic cars, you understand? Even before they translated from, what we call fuel-consuming cars to cars that run on electric, you understand, that have batteries. That introduction of a solution to ensure an emission-free car there was need for a solution evaluation. That what's the implication of introducing such a solution here? It's just like in our environment. You cannot introduce an electric car, you understand? And for electric cars to begin to run on our roads right now in Nigeria. Why? Because the environment has not been created to accommodate such solution. Why? Because we don't have constant power. And if we don't have constant power right now, and another major problem is that a lot of places have not been metered yet. So there are people using power that is not legitimate. They are using power that cannot be captured in terms of what they are consuming. So because of that abnormality, it will be difficult to introduce such products into our environment, even though it's a solution, and it's a solution that is working in a different environment. That's the idea of context in the core concepts we talked about. It could be working in other environments, but it might not work in your own environment. It's a lovely solution, but it's a solution that might not work in your own environment. So you must consider solutions per environment, solutions per, you understand, dispensation, solutions per race, solutions per, you understand, per organization. That is what we call the context in which you are able to understand where the solution is being deployed and its relevance. And that is what solution evaluation addresses. So this is what we are going to draw the curtain for today, as we have done. Congratulations, you have successfully completed this session today. And at this point, I will be glad to attend to any of our questions at this point. Anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to attend to any of our questions before we go.